So I'm now inside the old pharmacy. And you can see the desk where you would talk with the pharmacist. And then you see some little scales where they did their magic. And then the vessels that held the magic chemistry and drawers and so forth. A little bit more modern cash register and scales. It's interesting to imagine the level of efficacy of these pharmaceuticals and how much they benefited from the placebo effect. Notice the clock up there, it's pretty. How much of this is authentic, I don't know. But there are the various mixing pots. This would have been a patented toothpaste filler. I often wondered how they do that. A little crocodile, which was a symbol of good health, but also this was used for making cork, which probably was necessary to put in the bottles when they put fluids in there. And there you can see just like a tobacco chopping knife, that would have been used for chopping plants and so forth. This mill is from Philadelphia, and apparently it has a great story behind it. It was a scandal when Americans who came here wanted to buy this theoretically for $1 million. That sounds a tad high. Maybe it was in those dollars, Lithuanian dollars, but it would create a scandal which basically precipitated the development of and the establishment of this particular museum. It was a clever innovation for a heavy iron mortar where it's on that piece of iron which acts as a spring.
Latin name veneno means poisons.
So that's a special poison cabinet for securing those.
We had heroin in this time as medication against sore throat, asthma, bronchitis. Were invented.
For sure.
And yes, and at first people had no understanding about side effects. These are machines from pharmaceutical companies. This was beginning
for big toothpaste.
Yes, big amounts.
Tablets and
I will run. You will see all.
Oh, okay. So what we're looking at here is in its day. These were the modern machines that corporations use to make pharmaceuticals. This machine was capable of making 20 pills a minute. 100 years old.
Until 1940s even.
This was an oil making machine, a press, to use as the emulsion. Old fire extinguisher. Yeah. So this is evidence of this person was wounded with a sword and yet lived because of that thin bone that you see around the hole. This is evidence from the 4th century of a femur that's been repaired, a broken femur.
Was universal doctor.
Middle Ages, when the barber surgeon was in vogue, and trepanation, an example of that.
Of healing in here. You can see signs of inflammation.
This is an example of matted hair. In other words, a person who never took care of their hair. And finally, the lady in the 1960s was induced to have it removed. She was afraid to have it done because she thought she would go blind, so she was wallowing even in those years in gross superstition. Kaunas.
In making herbal extracts.
Use of the wine.
Wine. A lot of sorts of good quality wine imported from France, Italy, It was very expensive.
It was also used like a refrigerator room, so they would bring chunks of ice and leave it there, and then that would keep those items that needed to be refrigerated. We'll take a little bit of time to explore this tower and bastion and part of the wall. The lovely church that we visited, that's under a total exterior and interior restoration. And I'm overlooking a chunk of the remaining wall and a little bit of a base of a tower there. And it looks like this was designed to be not necessarily a water moat, although it is near the river, but too high in elevation, but at least making it more difficult for troops to go down and then climb back up. So we're up on a higher part inside the tower. After you climb up there, you don't see this sign until you come back to go around this thing. You get all the way up the top, then they tell you they can't go in there, you have to go in somewhere else, so I'm not going to worry about it. This is St. Gertrude's Church, built at the end of the 15th century. It's about 1490, something like that, or subsequent additions and remodels. Notice the other church across the street. I think it was Vilnius, they said there were 90 churches at one time. Probably a view into the crypt. It's interesting to look at these foundation stones. One of the stones referred to in one of the churches in Vilnius referred to something like 400 or 700 people towing it from wherever it was to the site. This sign, until you come back to go around this thing, you get all the way up the top, then they tell you they can't go in there, you have to go in somewhere else, so I'm not going to worry about it. The wall in Vilnius, this is a pretty substantial wall. It looks like to be 10-12 feet thick.